Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, welcome back to the Investigative Journal. Greg Anthony here, and boy, is it raining in Southern California, right? Whoa! I'm telling you, it'll never stop, but everything's green and looking good. Just like the Green New Deal, right? Presented by that Congresswoman, Miss Jesuit, I call her. You know, who put her up to that? She's 29 years old, and she's dictating to Americans how to live every portion of her life, and basically asking for indulgences. Yes, this whole idea of you can't use your car, you can't use airplanes, you can't do this, you got to restructure every building in the United States. All it's doing is punishing America for being successful, right? And where is China in all this? You know, China produces twice as much fossil fuels than we do, carbon in the air, and they don't say anything about China, and their argument is we have to set an example. Well, horseshit, we have to set an example. It's basically Cortez with this new Green Deal. It's a pie in the sky. Trump put it best when he said it was like a high school term paper that got a bad grade. But anyway, if you listen, you read what she wrote, they want everything. They want your money. They're going to raise taxes, to 70%. Why work? Then they're going to pay people who are unwilling to work, give them everything free. Then they're going to provide free health care for everybody, free schooling for everybody, all the way through college. I imagine graduate school. Are they going to allow the Catholic Church to stay here free? Oh, of course. They don't pay any taxes. So basically, they're going to tax everybody and then allow the real perpetrators of this Green New Deal, the Jesuits in the Vatican, because who else would do this? We know that they want to bring socialism and fascism to this country. None of the commentators on either the left or right on Fox or on CNN will ever get to the bottom of the Jesuits in the Vatican, so I have to. And my opinions aren't much different than a lot of people when it comes to the secular world. That's going on, make America a sovereign country. Of course, what is a country? A country is sovereign. It's allowed to decide who comes in and who comes out. But you can see that our government doesn't want to do that. All they've done over the years, they could have corrected this. If Switzerland can have a great border entry program, and I've watched it when in the 80s when I had to get into Switzerland, if they can do it, why can't America? The reason that America can't do it is because they don't want to do it. Whether they're on the left or the right, this shows you the control of the Vatican, who supports open borders. Look at what the Pope is doing in Italy and in Europe right now. They're not only getting money for every immigrant that moves in, however, they're doing the same thing here. We got caravan now after caravan. The last one I heard yesterday night, I was working late, at about midnight, was reported in the Mexican newspapers that there's a caravan now forming of 20,000 people on top of the ones that are already on their way. So if this isn't a crisis, Trump is going to file an emergency declaration today or yesterday, and probably by the time you hear this, he'd already filed it. And they're going to oppose it, then it's going to go to court. But why didn't they oppose any of Obama's or Bush's or Clinton's? There's like 56 national emergencies on the books that aren't as dangerous as this one. And it's incredible because this gives you, if you don't understand who's behind Ocasio-Cortez, that 29-year-old congresswoman who spouts off like telling all Americans that the world's going to end in 12 years if we don't change these policies. And all it is they're using climate change, global warming, which is a hoax, to blackmail people, to control you. They're using it as a control method, not because they want to clean up the environment, but because they want to put in all of these crazy ideas that will turn America into a socialist country. And socialism leads to fascism. And look at Venezuela. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But if you think that that girl that's in Congress now was not placed there, you're crazy. They're giving her airtime on both Fox and CNN out the yin-yang. Then they also brought in the first Muslim Congresswoman now who berated the Jews. And shame on you, I'm half Jewish. Shame on you. And basically, we have Sharia law now in the Congress. And a good point was brought up yesterday that I heard. Remember the Christian who got raked over the coals, lawsuit after lawsuit because he didn't want to bake a cake for a gay couple? Which is his right. A businessman should decide who he wants to do business with. I know I owned a couple of restaurants, and I could decide who came into my restaurant and who didn't. But ask this congresswoman if the Muslim bakery would bake a cake for homosexuals, and why doesn't she do anything about that? And what about her mosque banning homosexuality? You know what Sharia law and the Muslims think about it. Why doesn't she ever say anything about that? She is a racist because the way she talked about the problems of whites in America and how the Jews are the problem. She is the racist. But you know what? The media says you can't say she's a racist because she's a minority of color and a woman. So whoever said that a person is protected just because of their color? It's insane. There are black people who are racist. There are white people who are racist. There are Chinese people who are racist. And let me tell you, Cortez and this Muslim have been put there for a reason. And if you don't know that they're getting this message out, when Cortez says, we want socialism full blast, that is where they're going to go. This is just the introduction. So they put some lame congresswoman in there that's 29, and they say, oh, she's just young and stupid, and it's just aspirational politics. But you know, a lot of Democrats signed on to it, and then they give a caveat. But it's only it has to be done. Climate change must be taken care of. And then we get another Democrat telling me how to eat the other day. He wants to get rid of the cattle industry. You know, I'm telling you folks, if you don't nip this in the bud, which I know people won't, this is where we're going. And so if we look back from 100 years from now, you're going to see that what I said is true. The Jesuits put her in there to push socialism and to push this idea that you are in control. We're going to control everything about you. That's basically what it is. And if you look at it, why would they say we want to get rid of fossil fuels and cars? So to make it harder for you to travel. Then they said we want to replace air travel with high-speed trains. How are you going to take a train to Europe? Well, the problem here is they want to restrict your travel. They don't want you to go anywhere. They want to keep you locked in a cage. But however, guess what? All these elites will be traveling all over in airplanes, and they'll justify it by saying, we need to protect you. We need to travel to protect our interests that are going on overseas. So they'll be able to do what the hell they want, while you will be riding on a high-speed train that'll never get done. And California is a good example. I don't know how many years ago, but the federal government, your taxpayers, gave $3 billion to build a high-speed train system. The Democrats said, fine, in California. They won't give out $5 billion to protect your borders because they want illegal aliens, drugs, trafficking to come through to you and kill you. But they'll give $3 billion for some high-speed train to be built in California. That was because of the lobbyists and the interests of the railroad companies, like I think it's Siemens out of Siemens Railroad Company out of Germany. So now the new leftist governor, Gavin Newsom in California, just said he's canceling the project because it's over budget. It can't be done. And he also said, I'm going to keep the rest of the money, billions of dollars. He's going to keep your taxpayer money. What's he going to do with it? Give it back. If you're not going to finish the project, it was allocated for that. Why are you able to keep it when you cancel it? Because they were spending so much money. They still got a lot of billions left. That at the rate they were going, this thing would have cost 100 trillion and would have taken 100 years to build. So you're not going to get, they're in Washington now talking about a high-speed railroad, and now the guy in California says he can't be built. And plus he wants to keep the billions, but they won't give Trump, or they won't give you, Trump is a puppet too, but they won't give you money to protect your borders. How crazy are those people? And guess what? Guess what? It's going to get worse. Do you think, okay, so Trump will file an emergency, national emergency. They'll go court shopping, judge shopping to the Ninth Circuit in California, the Ninth Circus, and some liberal judge will make policy for the whole country. Now, don't you see a problem here in the separation of powers? The president says one thing, he's elected by the people, and a judge who is appointed to the federal court determines what the country's going to do now. So you got judges not deciding what the law is, but making law, and this will affect, so he'll put a stop on any national emergency and the federal courts will appeal, he'll lose there, then he'll go to the Supreme Court, which will take the case, because it involves separation of powers, presidential authority, etc., and then he'll win. So all it is delay, delay, delay. Now, as far as the Jesuits, I, for one, know, and I don't even have to have evidence, how could this 29-year-old Congresswoman come up with all this garbage at this time unless she was put there by the people who started communism and socialism, the Jesuits in the 1600s with the Paraguay experiments, and they've been involved in it all over the place. Now everybody's saying, well, look at Venezuela. Look at what's going on there. Well, what's going on there? Let me tell you, I've met several people from Venezuela, and I in fact talked to one who's still living there. And whenever years ago, it was a very prosperous country. In the 80s, 90s, I knew people that lived there, and Venezuela has oil and resources out the yin-yang. What do you think they're doing this for and getting people out of there to take it over? So now what they've done is they've depleted that country. They put in a dictator, and now they do their old game of after 3 million people live, these people are starving. They make an issue out of it. And now they have another guy that's supported by the United States to take over. Maduro and his 3,000 generals, do you believe they have 3,000 generals in Venezuela? Are putting a roadblock onto that. And then we have China and Russia, the two big guys behind them, and Iran. And we have America on this side, along with 40 other countries. Now, the interesting thing here is that at one point Venezuela was very successful. Then they go through this, they bring in a socialist government to deplete take everything, steal everything, hold it for the elites, and they force 3 million people to evacuate Venezuela. The ones remaining are starving. And they have this problem. Now people are going to say, when I make this statement, oh, you're crazy. Well, the Jesuits are behind that too, and a good example is in 2016, the Sacred Congregation of the Society of Jesus. No other man. How these guys are hypocritical. I mean, that they don't follow Jesus at the top levels. They use him as a front. The main decision-making body of the order met at its headquarters in Rome and elected Arturo Sosa of Venezuela as its new Jesuit general, the superior general, otherwise known as the Black Pope. Isn't that a coincidence that the new guy is from Venezuela and all this stuff is going on? Don't you think that he had a role in this somehow, some way? The military association, folks, it's not accidental. Just go back to the founder of the order, Ignatius Loyola, an aristocrat from the Basque region of Spain back in the 1500s, and a professional soldier. From the beginning, the order had a martial flavor, and its members were called soldiers of the Pope, and that's what they are today. Loyola was wounded in battle, stayed in a cave in the town of Manresa. You know, the idea of the cave and paganism. Why do you always see Mary in a cave? Because it's pagan. There he underwent a profound spiritual crisis. So we know we got Jesuit generals, known as the Black Pope, the most powerful people in the world. We've gone over many of their stories. And now we have Arturo Sosa from Venezuela there. And coincidentally, there's this big, huge crisis in Venezuela. And we also have a Jesuit Pope. So what do you think they're doing? The Jesuits have been involved in politics since since the killing of all the, in the Protestant Reformation, all the people they slaughtered in the Protestant Reformation for the Pope. Either you follow the Pope or you die. It's the same today, but they do it a little bit more deceptively. They serve the interests of the Pope, and typically close to the relative political elite in all of the centuries to follow. The Jesuits were rumored, not rumors, they're facts, in secret conspiracies. In term Jesuitical was basically known as Machiavellian. But Jesuits were also active in much broader activities, and defending the interests of marginal and oppressed groups against ruling elites. Yeah, this is how they go in. They were behind the French Revolution, the American Revolution, just to name a couple. And you can bet they're behind and aiding and abetting this crisis in Venezuela, just as they did in Syria with the Father Dall'Oglio, a Jesuit that we've documented on this show. So the newspapers, the left-wing and the right-wing press, have it all messed up because they don't really get to the bottom of why socialism is coming to America. The right will say it's crazy people on the left. The left will say the right hasn't done anything on climate change for years and is a party of the 1950s. So they fight this Hegelian dialectic on the news shows and in Congress to a point of nausea because they do not get to the bottom of this organization, which has its roots in the American Revolution, folks. Some of them might as well have been called founding fathers. What do you think we call them fathers for? I can go over story after story showing this Jesuit intrigue. And never will you hear this on the news. In fact, you get glowing reports about the holy man, the Pope. And I'm telling you, it is the craziest thing in the world. And if you look closely at even, what's happened in Syria, you're going to find Jesuit behind every rock. There's two incidences. One man, a Jesuit, was talking about, wrote about the Jesuits, and he talked about how Avery Dulles, S.J., said Mass one time. And you remember Allen Dulles, very influential in politics? Well, his brother is a Jesuit at Fordham. Very powerful man. So what we're talking about is this intermingling of the Jesuits and our government and pushing strategy. And so now we're facing, in America, a migration problem that's being put to the forefront. And you're seeing the dividing lines being drawn. And this is exactly how they operate. They want to put one side against the other. They will rub them together until there's actual strife, war, and then they get their way. Their synthesis will be, we have to move into a country that's more respectful of everyone, and so we will give you everything and we'll take care of you. And in the same time, they will take away every right you ever had or hope to have as an American. You won't be able to say there's an American dream. It will be coped in this word, the American New Green Deal. to protect the planet. And if you don't do it, you're a bad, immoral person. They're using more or less the environment and this New Deal as a spiritual movement. It is not political, because it's not based on really any realities that you can do. One thing in their program, they want to change and retrofit every building in the United States to meet new energy demands. It's not reasonable. They want to take away air traffic within 10 years. That's not reasonable. They want to take away cars, except for electric ones. That's not feasible. So they want to make everything free, which is not feasible because there'll be no money to pay for it. But, as Cortez said, this Jesuit Congresswoman, she says, don't worry, we can just print more. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that called counterfeiting? When you print money that doesn't have any value behind it? Like, what if I had a printing press here and I decided to print out $100,000 in 20s, and then I got caught? I'd be in jail. Well, how much has the Federal Reserve printed out over the years of phony money? It's kind of the same philosophy they use in gambling. There used to be, remember, they would put people away for running a numbers racket, things like that, until they started the lottery. And then they decided, well, we can make money gambling. So now you got casinos all over the place. But if I wanted to start my own casino, I'd go to jail, right? Illegal gambling. Well, they illegally make money and get away with it. They gamble and get away with it. Why can't everybody? Unless you gamble with them, and the house always wins, right? So, we understand that, what's her name? They call her OAC. Isn't that amazing how they give these people these titles? And both the left and the right play up this story so much. Because this is where they're going. This is where America's headed. This little idea of Trump and everything is just a little stumbling block they put here to realize, okay, we still have 50% of Americans that don't believe in our Green New Deal. They know the odds. So they realize, well, most of them are older people, so they're going to die. And then we got all these millennials growing up who, if you ask them about Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal, they would say it's so beautiful. It's what we need. And this is how the Jesuits and the United States government and the power elite will win without even a battle. Yes, without even a battle. They will get people to agree with them, even though they're lying out there through their teeth. Correct? Correct. So in the second half hour, we're going to change the course of our show and do something that will be a little different than talking about the Jesuits, okay? But take this and give it to people. Let people know what's really going on, because I'm telling you, folks, this little idea now that she brought up is where America is headed, and we'll get there. Because of one, people are apathetic. They don't understand who's the real enemy. We tell you on this show, and if people understood it, the Jesuits wouldn't be around. Or they would be around, but they'd be relegated to basically just a, boring Catholic priest who teaches children. And boy, do you want that. I mean, how do we allow Catholic schools to open when, there's a high percentage of priests who are, molesting kids, but that's okay. It's only one apple in the barrel, so we'll keep all Catholic schools open. Right? Right. That's what they do, because they don't deal with the problem. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app, for all of your mobile devices. Streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, boys and girls, back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. And I really do think, this is Greg Anthony. You can get my show at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com and also go to First Amendment Radio. I've been doing this a long, long time, better than 15 years. And let me tell you something. That first half hour I did, get it to people, because I think it kind of synthesizes really what the problem is in a general sense. Now, you got to pick away at it kind of, a little bit at a time. Every day you're going to find something new when it's regarding our friends over at Georgetown University and elsewhere in the world. But I'm telling you, there is a connection between them, and we've presented a mountain of evidence over the years. In fact, we can't get through to the mainstream because they're controlled by the very people we talk about. That's why it's so ridiculous. Just look at what's going on today in the news and take a look at what the Hegelian dialectic is and really what's happening. Now, today, I said I'd switch gears, and I have a mountain of evidence I'm going to present. Very compelling proof that the earth isn't what you think it is, folks. And every time that I do this show, and I do it every now and then because it's important, when you really think about it, if they can buffalo you as to what this universe really is or what the world really is and what's above your head, then they can do anything to you. It's that old adage, if they can kill the president, they can kill you. But it's true. Because there's such a mountain of evidence that makes me wonder, if they've lied about this, they've lied about everything. And why I want to bring this out today is I was listening to an astronaut today on the news talk about the last 15 years that he spent, researching and knowing and sending things to Mars. Then they showed pictures of Mars that looked like it was computer generated, but that's me. And I had said to myself, we're like living in the land of Oz here. This is all, like, might as well be Disneyland. Somebody said, have you ever been to Disneyland? I said, why go? All you got to do is step outside your door. And there it is. The best fantasy trip you can take is to Washington, D.C. So anyway, a mountain of evidence presented by a guy named Mr. McIntyre. Is that his name? I wanted to play this, yeah. Mr. McIntyre. And I liked what he said at the beginning of his video. Let me read this because I thought I was writing it. He said, I have zero tolerance for drama, insults, manipulation, passive-aggressive attacks, lying, or deception in any form. Comments possessing any of these attributes will be deleted. And as this is my video, he says, I am the arbiter of which comments qualify for deletion. Okay, tough guy. I like his attitude, though. You know, if he believes in something, let the man speak. He says, my love of truth and love of the pursuit of truth compelled me to conduct this experiment and produce this. I find the evidence I collected about the flat earth to be convincing. In fact, I find no way to interpret this data other than to say that it clearly supports the conclusion that the earth is flat. Yet, if you were to ask me if I believe the earth is flat, my answer would be, I don't know. Because at this point, I truly do not know what I believe. Boy, he sounds like me. I don't know what the hell to believe anymore either. I'm fully aware of what this evidence is pointing to, and yet my mind seems unable firmly to settle on the belief that the earth is flat. Me too, because, you know, I do it, but occasionally in a conversation I'll go, oh, this planet's going to hell in a handbasket. And you know why I do that? Because since I was a kid, they brainwashed me. I walked into the teacher's room, and there I see a big globe, and I would spin it and close my eyes and put my finger there and say, wherever it lands, that's where I'm going tomorrow. Lands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Then I do it again, and it lands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Then I did it the third time, and it landed in, guess where, Brazil. I said, I'm on my way. But I'm sure you played that game too, but it isn't that way. They should spin something on the flat earth. Have a spinning flat earth replica instead of a globe. Okay? I think they should have a flat earth in every room in our school system. Our free school system, according to Ocasio-Cortez, who says that we're going to have free university. You know, I had to get a football scholarship to go to university, work my ass off. And then I spent an extra year because I wanted to be a stupid journalist. So I had to pay for that. Why the hell should these kids not have to pay for it? Right? Work hard. You'll get somewhere. But strive for the truth, like this guy says. And one of the things we've been lied about is the shape of this earth. And although you may have trouble getting your, mind around it, you don't have to, because it's not round, right? You don't have to get your mind around anything. Just listen to what the man has to say.
In this video, I am going to present what I consider to be very compelling proof for the flat earth. I have total confidence in the data collected and the interpretation of the data. And yet, I still don't really understand how this evidence could be so clearly supporting the conclusion that the earth is flat. Because how could the earth be flat? I can't even begin to wrap my head around that concept. But the evidence clearly supports this conclusion. I stumbled onto the flat earth about 6 months ago. And I would say that since that time, I've watched close to 200 flat earth videos, maybe 1 or 2 per day, with a focus on videos that presented empirical evidence. And out of everything that I saw over the last 6 months, I never encountered anything that conclusively proved the flat earth to me. I ran across a lot of videos that were very convincing, but nothing that ever sealed the deal and just convinced me 100% that this was true. There was always some little shred of doubt in each video, some aspect of the evidence that was ambiguous or subjective and could be called into question. So I started trying to develop some ideas for experiments or observations I could make to prove one way or the other conclusively whether the Earth was a globe or flat. I didn't really have an opinion on the subject, but I felt that the debate was interesting. I went through a lot of concepts and actually went out and did some experiments and didn't really find anything that I thought was going to deliver proof until I happened upon this test, which is actually quite a simple idea, but I believe delivers conclusive proof of the shape of the Earth. Part of the research for this test, once I came up with the idea, was that I had to find specific geologic features in a particular alignment with one another, and that took quite a bit of time. I spent a lot of time looking at maps on the internet and ordering maps off of Amazon and eBay and looking at those, just doing a lot of different types of research trying to find what I was looking for. As it turned out, what I was looking for happened to be in a place my wife and I hike in quite often, actually. It's a really amazing place to hike. We love going up there. It's called the Shining Rock Wilderness. It's located about an hour south of Asheville, North Carolina, on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And it's a really unique place. It's unique in that it has multiple peaks over 6,000 feet that are grassy balds, whereas most of the mountains in the southern United States are covered with trees. So you can hike up there and hike over these balds, and on a day with good visibility, you have a 360-degree view of about 60 to 70 miles, in which you can see hundreds of mountain peaks. So once I had identified the appropriate geologic features and mapped out the approximate locations where I could conduct the observation, then my wife and I went up to the Shining Rock Wilderness, and we did, actually, it took us about 6 times altogether of doing much longer hikes than we normally do. We usually hike maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours a couple of times a week. And this required 5 and 6 hour hikes to get near the areas I had pinpointed on the map. So the way the process worked is we'd get into that general area, we would be on a trail, and we would kind of set up a mini base camp where my wife would wait for me, and I would descend off of the trail and make my way through the really dense brush of the mountainsides, trying to locate precise point where I could complete the observation. We repeated this process until we finally found the right location to conduct the test. And we ran into a variety of issues while doing this. Sometimes the ridge I was on would descend too quickly and there would be a ridge in front of me that would be blocking my view, or the ridge wouldn't drop fast enough and my angle would be wrong and I wouldn't have the line of sight that I required. It was tough to get at the right elevation and also have a view of what I was trying to see. Then we also faced weather conditions. We'd have clouds move in, or it would get hazy towards the afternoon, and I would lose that 45 miles of visibility that I required to do the test. But eventually we did find the location to do the test, and what I saw when I got there was shocking to me. I mean, before I even set up the camera or anything, and I just looked out across towards the features I had identified on the map and saw them, as I expected I would, what they were showing me was that the curvature that should have been there, it just was not there. There was no way around it. The evidence I collected proves that the Earth is flat, which is ridiculous. But I welcome anyone to challenge this evidence and show me how it says anything other than the Earth is flat. Okay, so as to the design of the test, I'd like you to take a look at this beach ball, which is obviously spherical, as the Earth is claimed to be. We're going to zoom in on a section of the beach ball, and imagine you have 3 objects affixed to the surface that are all the same height and in a row. In this case, I use toothpaste caps because we're all familiar with those. The regular line that connects the tops of those caps will also connect the bases and give you a very accurate representation of the shape of the object they're attached to, which in this case is the beach ball. So, get rid of the line, caps, and we're going to zoom back out and get rid of the beach ball. In its place, we have the globe. Again, we're going to zoom in on a section of the globe. And same thing, imagine you have three objects that are the same height, all in a row. In this case, I chose mountains, because most mountains all over the world, the elevation has been recorded, and there's lots of sources for that. It's fairly easy to find three mountains in a row that are the same elevation. It took me some time, I think because it was the first time I ever did it, trying to locate this was actually pretty difficult and time-consuming. Because you need three mountains of equal elevation, or actually you need two. One on either end can be higher, and you can actually just go down a little lower from the peak to make the elevation. But it requires certain characteristics. Those three mountains have to be in a straight line. Two of them have to be the same elevation. The third one has to be the same or a little bit higher. And the peaks also that you're observing have to be prominent.
Okay, so what I wanted to talk about here was he is trying, I've done some of my own experiments throughout the years on the curvature, and it's conclusive also to me that the curvature that the Nassau figures give us doesn't make sense. And their explanations don't make sense either. Now, what this reminds me of is the same thing when you try to talk to journalists on Fox News or CNN, where I've sent emails and things and said, could you please look into the Jesuit connection and history, as well as a lot of the things that go on are related to them in the Vatican. And I've sent mountains of evidence, but they are convinced that it doesn't apply. Just as people are convinced that even if you show them solid evidence of the Earth's curvature and other things done through this man's research, I can remember doing a laser test on 2 points that the laser should never have touched over miles and miles of distance, but they did, showing that the Earth wasn't curved. There have been many things done on this, as well as hundreds of other experiments going back to experiments before NASA that showed the Earth could not be round. And so it's the same thing, really. You can give this evidence to people, but they will not believe you. It lays a little bit of doubt in their mind, and they do some research, but it all depends how deep you really go, or if you have an agenda that means that you don't want people to go there. You know, ever think about that guy Elon Musk? They're giving him billions and billions of dollars, I don't know if it's billions, for research to how to have space travel for average citizens. Now, if he told you the truth and said there's a cover over the Earth and you can't have space travel, he wouldn't have any money. And why are they doing that? So, I mean, they all work together, don't they? So you have this kind of problem that people have been propagandized on both these subjects I talk about. And even if you give them great empirical evidence on both sides, Jesuits, Vatican involved in the New World Order, and the world is not round, it is flat, here's the information, people won't believe you. But then there's the people that know that that's the way it is, and they want to hide it because they have an agenda. So, it's hard to break through is what I'm getting at. But the real problem is that even if we did break through, they've got such a head start that nothing's ever going to change. You're never going to see a flat earth in the school systems, and you're never going to see the Jesuits outed on the national news. That's just the way it's going to be, and I hate to break it to you, but that's the way I view it. And you ask me, why do you continue then? And my answer is this. I don't like to be lied to. I don't like deception. And I don't really care if I can't change it. It's kind of like that old adage, you know, don't worry about the things you can't change. You can understand them, but don't try to change the impossible. And to me, these are impossible tasks. Now, there's two types of people that will respond to that and say, Greg, no, if we work hard enough, we can change the world. We can out the Jesuits and teach people the world is flat, and everybody will accept it. No. Then there'll be others who say, Greg, you're right, because prophecy, Bible prophecy tells us this is the way it's going to be until Christ comes. Okay? Now, the Jews will disagree with that because, well, they will say, well, he hasn't come yet, so yeah, maybe when he comes. But the point I'm trying to make is you cannot discount this evidence or not go for it if you really want to seek the truth. So you're lying to yourself if you say you're a truth seeker and you don't go deep enough. And you don't have an agenda. I can understand people who have an agenda not wanting to go deep enough. I can't understand people that don't have an agenda and just cave in. That's really not easy to explain. Very difficult to explain, by the way. Yes, very difficult. Okay, so since we talked a little bit about the flat earth, so why don't we end with the Black Pope? We talked about him earlier, his command structure, and a little bit about why the Jesuits run the world, not the Jews. Now here was Father Nicholas was the SJ, Superior General. Now it's Mr. Sosa. And they're going over Father Nicholas right now. Right? Here they go. Okay, I had a little trouble with that, so I'll just finish. We only got a few minutes here. I'll finish with some of my comments. And people have asked me in the past, how do I come up with this conclusion that doesn't seem to be shared by most people in the United States, most people in the world? One, it's very simple. I spent a number of years in Rome and saw up close and personal during one of the biggest scandals there in the 1980s exactly how they operate. Not at the time putting all the pieces to the puzzle together, but it started my quest into doing that. And really, I thought this wouldn't be such a hard story to get out there, and I thought I'd become, have a mainstream slot talking about it, but little did I know that America at the time was also involved. I thought that perhaps there was still a group in America, in our power elite, that wanted to make sure this story was told, but that was wrong. So it showed me just how much control these people really have. And so as you begin to piece it apart, looking for that evidence, you'll find some, but much is hidden, and it's very difficult to get at. But there's still enough out there to make these conclusions based not on theory, on conspiracy theories or agenda objectives that I may have, but basically just on the way that they've left a trail of evidence for us to pick apart, knowing that it'll never get to the mainstream masses of people because they had to control the media. Otherwise, this whole thing would just fall like a house of cards. Because the more people that would understand it, the more we would then begin to put checks and balances on what's happening. But as you can see, let's just look at some extrinsic evidence and the way Congress operates. It's a pretty... People always wonder, why can't they get anything done? Well, they don't understand who they work for. And if they understood the story that we tell here, they'd understand that's exactly why they don't get anything done. It's not because of partisan politics. It's more or less because of politics that demand this kind of gridlock, because each of them on both sides working together at the highest levels. That's why when you look back at this border problem and you ask yourself, well, why didn't the Republicans get the money for the wall when Paul Ryan was Speaker of the House and the Republicans controlled both the House, the Senate, and the presidency? Because Paul Ryan was there to block it. And Trump knew that. They never got anything done. Why do you think Trump put Attorney General Sessions in there to allow this Russia hoax to go on, but to never do anything against the Clinton people? Because that's the way they wanted it. He knew that Sessions wouldn't do anything. Now they put in a new Attorney General. This guy was also Attorney General for Bush. You think he's going to get anything done? No. Nothing. You will not see anybody from the Clinton side get anything more than just a slap on the wrist and outed in the American, the right-wing American media. This is as far as it'll go. And the reason they're playing the hoax with Trump is to block every method. It's almost like they're telling it is like they're telling the American people, this is what we can do to you. We can take you through the coals without any evidence, just like they're doing with Trump. Now, Trump's not the victim here. He signed up for the job and is probably the greatest actor so far in political history, at least that I've seen. And when I say actor, I mean actor, a real actor. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.